We have taken up the study of the last 6 chapters of Sri Aurobindo's book, The Life Divine. These 6 chapters form a kind of a rapid summary of the overall content of the entire book, and from there the practical implications and applications for the integral yoga, for the goal that the Life Divine sets before us. The framework of the book not only takes up all the difficult problems of human existence, of even the universe's existence, the nature of reality, and penetrating deep into all the possible perspectives, it shows you the deeper principles around which these different perspectives fall in place naturally as complementary aspects of a deeper truth. And as we go through the entire book, our mind is shown all the different visions in which the universe and reality can be known through, but brings us to the most essential experience that unites all these perspectives. The last 6 chapters then take the practical form of what it means for us in the integral yoga, the stages through which our life has to pass in order that this underlying reality can become more and more expressed in our life, that our human mental consciousness can grow into its highest possibility in a supramental consciousness and eventually even in a supramental life. So that's the broad thrust of these last 6 chapters. And Satprem comments, Sri Aurobindo spoke of the working of the chakras replacing the organs. And Mother's reply, yes, 300 years, he said. Mother laughs. This was in relation to one of Sri Aurobindo's last writings, where he takes up this question of the physical transformation and develops also the intermediate step of the mind of light. But there, speaking of the physical transformation, Sri Aurobindo says increasingly as the body becomes more and more divinized, the divine power working behind and through begin to take up the functioning of matter itself, and thereby replacing the physical process and its dependence on process by a direct action of energy of a higher consciousness. So for example, if we look at the heart has to pump blood. But what is it really doing? It is sucking some material from elsewhere in the body and then pushing it back to flow through the body. That's the larger, deeper function of the heart. But look a step deeper. What is this material that it's taking and pushing? The blood. Why is the blood necessary? It is carrying energy in the form of oxygen perhaps, and nutrition. The heart takes the old blood with less nutrition, less oxygen and energy, pushes it harder through the lungs, where they will draw more material, more energy, oxygen, and also at other stages draw nourishment from the digestive processes, and then pushes them back to other organs all over the body. Abstract this one more step. What's really happening? A forced circulation of energy and a nutrition is being made to take place. Something is required which continues circulation of energy, nutrition, by which all other organs act and survive. Abstract this one level further. Forget heart, forget blood. Look only at the energy that is being pumped and the substance of nutrition which becomes substance of the new cells that is being pushed. And now what you have as a picture is a center functioning to radiate energy and radiate material which will form the body. And at the same time, perhaps as a secondary function, withdrawing wasted material, but that may or may not last. If the center pushing is strong enough, the material which is wasted can be disposed of by other means. Now, if you look at the lungs, similarly, look at their deeper functioning. They are drawing air from outside, oxygen or other materials, and then taking them through a filtration to infuse into the body process. The filtration is to remove everything else which is unnecessary and protect what is already infused so that it does not break out. And the action of drawing in to infuse and then pushing out the stale air so that it may replace another with another burst of energy. If you abstract it through many levels, what are the lungs doing? They are the part of our consciousness which relates to the universal energy, connecting it to the individual energy, drawing in, and then infusing into the body. The heart taking up some of this and pushing it into the body. Now, if you abstract in this way the working of all the organs, you will find they can be replaced by a direct working of energy. The lungs, for example, can be replaced by a direct relationship of this part of the body with the universal life force in a manner that it can draw it within and concretize it, materialize it sufficiently to support the body's energy requirement. The heart would also not have to do a double pumping, as the lungs also don't have to take in to throw out. They may be able to take in, and the throwing out process might take place by the lower organs as they're already doing it. So in this way, step by step, abstracting all the operations of the organs, we can see how not only an energy working directly in matter could replace them, but interestingly, each of these organs is located at a center of energy of the chakras, where already such an operation is taking place. The heart chakra naturally opens out in resonance to the universal energy and the universal life force. It is not only that which takes in, but also gives out. The lower chakras similarly have functions which match the level at which the organs exist around them. So Sri Aurobindo, in a very suggestive passage, indicates that in the supramentally transformed body, this direct working of energies will gradually replace the physical dependence on process and material. Such a body, therefore, will be able to literally will itself to draw more energy, will itself to exercise a greater extent of nourishment that it infuses into the body, and so on, and shape itself from inside out, sustain itself from inside out by a conscious and even a superconscious process of a spiritual energy. And this is what Satprem is pointing to from that text, where he says, Sri Aurobindo spoke of the working of the chakras replacing the organs. And Mother, yes, 300 years, he said, and she laughs. Then after a silence, she says, with a bit of reflection, it's easy to understand. If it were a question of stopping something and starting something else, it might be done rather rapidly. You'll stop this body, transfer your consciousness into another body. You can discard the existing structure, move into a new structure of working. Done. Easy to do. But instead, she says, but to keep a body alive, to keep it functioning, and at the same time have enough of a new functioning so that it stays alive, and then a transformation, that makes a very difficult combination to realize. I'm fully aware of it, fully aware of the immense amount of time that's needed for this to be done with. If this heart is to be replaced by that working of the power, and in a smooth transition without stopping the process of life, well, it's going to be much more complicated and much more gradual, therefore. And then she says, above all, of course, when we come to the heart, to replace the heart with the center of power, a formidable dynamic power, Mother laughs. At what precise moment are you going to eliminate the circulation and throw in the force? At some point, you will have to have some kind of transition. It's difficult. No, I don't have much to say. Nothing of what I have just been telling you is publishable, Mother says. It can go in the agenda, but it can't be published. And so we skip this portion and go now to that great revelation that she makes in 1970. There she's speaking of her experience in seeing the body of one of the sadhikas living in the ashram and the psychic being. And she says, it was yesterday or the day before, R was here just in front of me kneeling, and I saw her psychic being towering above by this much, gesture of about 8 inches taller. It's the first time. Her physical being was short and the psychic being was tall, like this. And it was a sexless being, neither man nor woman. So I said to myself, it may be always that way, I don't know, but at that time I noticed it very clearly. I said to myself, but the psychic being is the one that will materialize and become the supramental being. I saw it. It was like that. There were distinctive features, but not very pronounced. And it was clearly a being that was neither male nor female, that had features of both combined. And it was taller than her. It exceeded her on every side by about this much. Gesture extending beyond the physical being by about 8 inches. She was here and it was like this. This color was that if it became very material, would be Auroville's color, orange. It was softer, as if behind a veil. It was absolutely precise, but it was this color. And there was hair, but it was something else. Now she's describing the form of the psychic being, and she says, its color was, if it became very material, then it would be orange. And now what does that mean? In fact, in the experience we find, as we shift out from the physical world, from the physical substance into the subtle world, the range of colors is much larger. The dynamic range of the colors, the brightness and the luminescence are much larger. And so when you look at something in the subtle world and then you try to translate it into the physical world, you find there is no equivalent color. And if you go still deeper into the psychic domain, at that point, there is no sense of rigidity of form. And so the sense of color also is of pure soul experience. How do you translate that into physical terms? And so this is what she is describing. If somehow that became dense like matter, then this is the color that you would experience. It was softer, as if behind a veil. And then she says, another time maybe I'll see better. But I found it very interesting because that being seemed to tell me, you're wondering what the supramental being will be? Here it is. Here it is. This is it. And it was there. It was her psychic being. Then one understands. One understands the psychic being will materialize and it gives a continuity to evolution. And she explains, this creation gives you a clear impression that nothing is arbitrary, that there is a sort of divine logic behind which isn't like our human logic, but highly superior to our logic, but it exists. And that logic was fully satisfied when I saw that. She mentions another experience of somebody, she saw the supramental light. And so I skipped that. And she discusses her own body at a certain stage in her sadhana for humanity. Her mind and vital were as if set aside, and only the body was left as the full focus for her transformation. And she says, the body and the psychic being were left. So then I understood why the mind and vital were sent away from this body and the psychic being was left. Naturally, it was the psychic being that covered all movements earlier, so it was nothing new. But there were no more difficulties. All the complications coming from the vital and the mind, which had their imprints, their tendencies, it was all gone. So I understood, that's it. It's this psychic being that is to become the supramental being. I had never bothered to know what it looked like, but when I saw that, I understood. And I see it, I still see it. I have kept the memory. Its hair almost looked red, strangely. It wasn't like red hair, but it looked like it. And its expression, such a fine expression, gently ironical, so extraordinary. Oh, extraordinary, extraordinary. You understand, my eyes were open. It was an almost material vision. Then one understands. All at once, all questions vanished. It became very clear, very simple. And the psychic is precisely what lives on. So if it materialized, it means doing away with death. But doing away, what's done away with, is only what's not according to the truth. That's what goes away. All that's incapable of being transformed in the image of the psychic, of being part of the psychic. That's really interesting. And so it ends there. This last part is very interesting. When she speaks of doing away with death, what is it that is shed? Both in death and in an evolution, in any growth or change. Only what is not according to the truth, that's what goes away. All that is incapable of being transformed in the image of the psychic, of being part of the psychic. Now think about this, because it's something so profound. In your mind, whatever in your mind's working, thinking, habits, ideas, is not according to the deeper truth of the soul, of the divine presence, of your inmost being that is really the one journeying. Whatever is not aligned to that, what happens to it? Eventually, it goes out of sync and eventually becomes so irrelevant it just falls away. That process of going out of sync, becoming irrelevant and falling away is what we call decay. What is alive, what is fresh, that which is directly living expression of what is true. The thing doesn't remain alive and fresh because it's moved out of sync with what is true, because the truth has moved forward, the universe has moved forward, God has moved forward. So Sri Aurobindo has this phrase, God shall grow up while the wise men talk and sleep. Meaning the whole journey of the evolution moving forward is really the divine revealing, unfolding, unveiling itself. And anything which is in sync is now fresh and living. As it moves out of sync, we find it becoming stale, losing force, until it does not have the support of the truth anymore, it just breaks down. So in your mind, the parts of you which are rigid, unable to keep pace, well, they start breaking down. In your vital emotions, energies, similarly, and the same in your body. Except that the mind is more plastic. Energies are more plastic. And so, when you find something is old and it's become stale, you're able to shape your mind, replacing the old with the new. And every now and then you realize, oh, the way I was thinking, it does not fit anymore the need of my present, and there is a sudden change that takes place. But we can't do that with the body. The resistance of the body, its rigidity in form is so much greater that somehow we are unable to force the body to shape itself. In fact, the first experience of aging is you realize that you want to do what you were always doing, and suddenly your body is being dragged. It's lagging. It's somehow not in sync, unable to keep up. What is this? You feel the gap. And the gap grows more and more, and suddenly you find, oh, why is my body like this? I don't feel it in myself. That gap grows until the body eventually becomes a shell, unable to keep up. And you say, well, not interesting. You choose to drop it. To take on a fresh body now, which is supple enough that now it can express what you are, what you need. So what's falling away always is this which cannot keep up with the truth. We're looking at the body's limitations, and here she gives the key. The part in you that is ever fresh, ever young, always true, is the psychic being. And when that comes forward and takes charge, and when that shapes your thoughts and emotions, and even your physical body, then to the extent that its influence is there, it is always fresh and young and true. But so far we saw the psychic only as an influence in the mind and in the emotions and perhaps even on the body, but as an influence. But if the psychic consciousness becomes more and more densified, not just as an influence, but as an active substance infusing into the body, when its substantiality becomes so concrete that it begins now even to become the physical body, at that point you will have the physical transformation, the supramental body, which will be what the physical result will be of the divinization. And here mothers had this insight. And the psychic is precisely what lives on. So, if it is materialized, it means doing away with death. And you notice in all of our earlier discussion, in our study of the life divine, where Sri Aurobindo described how the mental personality and even the vital personality could be carried into the next life, it was really formation of the individuality, integration with the inner, eventually all the way to the psychic, and being plastic in expression for the needs of the evolving spirit and psychic being. And it's obvious, the one thing which is able to do that is the psychic consciousness. So what we have here is an extraordinary insight. The psychic being which has been secretly leading evolution, inhabiting this triple body, now comes forward more and more, not only as an influence, but becoming densified as the substance of all these bodies. And it becomes now the very substance of divinity as the supramental body. This insight will now link to the next chapter which we are beginning, where Sri Aurobindo, in the very first paragraph, describes the nature of this struggle of spiritual evolution taking place in matter which is resistant. The chapter is titled Man and the Evolution. The first paragraph will describe this, and keep in mind at the back of the mind the idea that it is the psychic being that will materialize eventually to become this transformed body. And you will see the insight we gain as we read this paragraph. Subsequently, for the rest of the paragraph, Sri Aurobindo will then describe what are the core principles and processes of this evolution in humanity. And these should be retained into the whole yoga and the process of yoga and the eventual transformation of the human being into divine being and divine life. So he is going now to most essential principles.
Words of Sri Aurobindo. Psychic and rebirth. It is necessary to understand clearly the difference between the evolving soul, psychic being, and the pure Atman, self or spirit. The pure self is unborn, does not pass through death or birth, independent of birth or body, mind or life, or this manifested nature. It is not bound by these things, not limited, not affected, even though it assumes and supports them. The soul, on the contrary, is something that comes down into birth and passes through death, although it does not itself die, for it is immortal, from one state to another, from the earth plane to other planes, and back again to the earth existence. It goes on with this progression from life to life through an evolution which leads it up to the human state and evolves through it all a being of itself which we call the psychic being that supports the evolution and develops a physical, a vital, a mental, human consciousness as its instruments of world experience and of a disguised, imperfect, but growing self-expression. All this it does from behind a veil, showing something of its divine self only insofar as the imperfection of the instrumental being will allow it. But a time comes when it is able to prepare to come out from behind the veil, to take command and turn all the instrumental nature towards the divine fulfillment. This is the beginning of the true spiritual life. The soul is able now to make itself ready for a higher evolution of manifested consciousness than the mental human. It can pass from the mental to the spiritual, and through degrees of the spiritual to the supramental state. Till then, there is no reason why it should cease from birth. It cannot in fact do so. If, having reached the spiritual state, it wills to pass out of the terrestrial manifestation, it may indeed do so, but there is also possible a higher manifestation in the knowledge and not in the ignorance. It is not the naked spirit, but the psychic being that goes to the psychic plane to rest till it is called again to another life. There is therefore no need of a force to compel it to take birth anew. It is in its nature something that is put forth from the divine to support the evolution, and it must do so till the divine's purpose in its evolution is accomplished. Karma is only a machinery. It is not the fundamental cause of terrestrial existence. It cannot be, for when the soul first entered this existence, it had no karma. The psychic being at the time of death chooses what it will work out in the next birth and determines the character and conditions of the new personality. Life is for the evolutionary growth by experience in the conditions of the ignorance till one is ready for the higher light. The dying wish of the man is only something on the surface. It may be determined by the psychic and so help to shape the future, but it does not determine the psychic's choice. That is something behind the veil. It is not the outer consciousness's action that determines the inner process, but the other way round. Sometimes, however, there are signs or fragments of the inner action that come up on the surface. Namely, some people have a vision or remembrance of the circumstances of their past in a panoramic flash at the time of death. That is the psychic's review of the life before departing. All human incarnations or births have naturally a psychic being. It is only other types, like the vital beings, that have not, and that is precisely the reason why they want to possess men and enjoy physical life without being themselves born here, for so they escape the psychic law of evolution and spiritual progress and change.
The chapter, as every chapter of the Life Divine, begins with quotations from the various Upanishads or the Vedas. In these quotations, Sri Aurobindo shows you how the seed ideas which he will be discussing in this chapter were already perceived in these traditions. And so, in a sense, he links the ancient knowledge of the Veda and the early Upanishads to what he is bringing forward today in a more mental formation suitable for the modern mind of humanity. Whereas earlier forms of expression of the same truths were more intuitive and suitable for the age then. He has 5 quotations. The first is Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The one God, all beings, all-pervading, the inner self of all, presiding over all actions, witness, conscious knower and absolute. The one in control over the many who are passive to nature, fashions one seed in many ways. So you get the gist of this idea. One consciousness in all these forms, always inhabiting all the forms. The forms themselves are being fashioned by nature. Nature drives your body evolution. It's running everything. You don't do anything with your body. It makes you hungry, it digests, it heals. Nature, after all. You are just somewhere, this awareness inside, looking out. But the one who controls you and all the many, you who are passive to nature, that one fashions one seed in many ways. That is, there is one seed behind all humanity. One seed behind each animal species, let's say. And yet each form of the species is different. The real idea is what Sri Aurobindo will refer to as a seed principle around which or from which all the variations emerge of forms. So this is the first quotation. The second also from Shvetashvatara Upanishad. The Godhead moves in this field, the whole universe, the cosmic field, modifying each web of things separately in many ways. One, he presides over all wombs and natures, himself the womb of all. He is that which brings to ripeness the nature of the being, and he gives to all who have to be matured the result of development, and appoints all qualities to their workings. So again, a complex sentence, but in essence, the idea that there is one consciousness, and although everything is interconnected in the world, this is the web of things, each thing in the web is as if separately modified. He presides all the wombs, that is, the whole movement of birth, of new forms emerging from old. Not only the physical womb, let's say, in an animal or a human, which gives birth to a new body, but equally in stone, the womb in which new elements are created. In the sun, the womb in which new elements are produced to be thrown out to become the planets. In anything, in the tree, the womb from which the flower emerges, always there is this creative focus concentrating to give birth to something different and new. Everywhere there is this creative focus, and he presides over all the wombs, himself the womb of all. The whole universe bursts out of his concentration and creative expression. He is that which brings to ripeness the nature of the being. Within each thing there is the essential being. Within the flower is the essence of the flower. He makes the flower come to ripeness to reveal fully. And whatever has matured, he gives to them the result of their development. So in this vision, we see the one presiding over not only all the forms and their creations, but also their fulfillment. But who is that one? Where is that one? In all beings. He moves in this field, not only presiding over from above, but in all things. The third quotation from Katha Upanishad: He fashions one form of things in many ways. Similar idea, different text. Next from the Rig Veda: Who has perceived this occult truth, that the child gives being to the mothers by the workings of his nature, and offspring from the lap of many waters? He comes forth from them a seer, possessed of his whole law of nature. Manifested, he grows in the lap of their crookedness and becomes high, beautiful, and glorious. This is the offspring of the lap of many waters. The waters here are the different levels of consciousness, domain of consciousness, and from all of these is formed something. And the seer, possessed of his whole law of nature, this is the consciousness of Agni, who sees, carries within him the knowledge by which he will fulfill himself. So it's the vision from within the seed that knows what it must become, draws material from all these different grades of consciousness and forms himself to fulfill. Literally, the sense of the soul entering into this world, taking material from the mind, from the life, from matter, and forming around itself to fulfill itself in these different densities of substance. And finally, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad: From the non-being to true being, from the darkness to the light, from death to immortality. So, and the implication is, what is this being doing? When it took up form, it was in substance which was unconscious, even inconscient, empty, blank, slate. And into that, it put itself and formed out of it, made beings, many beings, growing eventually to true being. Where there was darkness, increasingly it brings awareness of consciousness, growth of light, until it reveals the true light of the origin. And where everything was lost in death, in complete empty space, it has not only created form, but the struggle in the form, which is repeatedly dying, eventually it awakens to a consciousness which is immortal, and even seizes on form to be able to express its immortality. Now all these, you will see, have within the common thread of the struggle of evolution of the divine himself inside the evolutionary process, driving from within, but at the same time supporting from above, presiding over the whole process and ensuring that things are led to their fulfillment. And even though there is a common template to the evolution, everything is different and unique. So this is you will see here the key common ideas across all these quotations. And this is what you will see through the rest of the chapter, now fully elaborated. He begins thus: a spiritual evolution, an evolution of consciousness in matter, in a constant developing self-formation, till the form can reveal the indwelling spirit, is then the keynote, the central significant motive of the terrestrial existence. This significance is concealed at the outset by the involution of the spirit, the divine reality, in a dense material inconscience. So at first you have this concealment, but what's really coming out is the spiritual evolution. Consciousness evolving in matter, in a constant developing self-formation, meaning at each step the consciousness is saying, how do I want to express myself? How do I want to fully draw out what I am capable of, what I am already in consciousness? Now you notice in a very simple way, a child looking at the world, what does he do? He's trying to understand. Once he begins to understand, he tries to seize upon what's happening, catch, change, move, modify. To do what? Assert himself. Assert what? Something he feels he is able to do to become or to influence in his environment. This is the impulse at the heart of the whole spiritual evolution. Constant developing self-formation. You're changing all the time. But the change is not merely going round and round. It's developing to something new. And what is it that is developing? What you are already somehow within as a seed. This is the keynote. It is a point on which the music keeps returning. So for a while it's as if the music wanders to some other aspect. Oh, I want to learn something new. But then it comes back to affirming and asserting your own growth. Having learned this new thing now, I can more effectively express myself or become more mature and so on. So it's the keynote, the thing around which everything else, all the music forms. The central significant motive of the terrestrial existence. Now you can exist on many levels. You can exist in the vital world, mental world, live in the spiritual worlds. You can live in the higher mental worlds like the Gandharvas, beings of music and art, poetry. And these are wonderful, beautiful worlds. But there, whatever you experience, whatever you grow in, is within the type of that life. So the musical being is busy exploring greater wonders and variations of its music. The power being is busy exploring the greater forms and expressions of its powers. The thinking, rational mind is busy exploring its rational possibilities and thinking new ideas and greater ideas. But it's stuck in that. The physical domain, material world, terrestrial existence, is the one place where you can experience all of these, and all of these superimposed and interdependent on each other. And this is the beauty of it. So the central significant motive of terrestrial existence, if you want to take birth in matter in a body and not live only in those worlds, then here is this point, the motive, the most important thing is constant evolution of consciousness in matter by self-formation that's developing. And all of these layer by layer open out of matter, and you have the experience of evolution. You do not have experience of evolution on those worlds in this sense. Yes, you grow, you create new things, but within your type. Here you grow and create new things, break beyond your type to make for new types of experience, all of which become now facets of your growing personality. So yes, I am a musician now, tomorrow I am a thinker, day after I am a warrior, and they are all facets of my consciousness unfolding. This kind of evolution is possible because there was at first this very hard, numbing, dulling, compressing influence that shut all possibilities down into inconscience. So that's why he says, this significance is concealed at the outset by the involution of the spirit, the divine reality, in a dense material inconscience. All those levels of consciousness which exist with their own worlds, as if compress and plunge into matter and lose themselves into this darkness, and they are concealed now. So first you see only this inconscience, but now because these things are concealed, they start nudging, pushing. But because all of those are concealed, they can all emerge and grow, and in the physical life, in a material body, you can experience all the levels of consciousness simultaneously expressed. So, but the significance, the central motive of evolution, of spiritual evolution, is hidden because of the dulling, dense material inconscience. But with the involution, it is hidden. The divine reality is hidden. Spirit is hidden. And this is going to be extremely important. A veil of inconscience, a veil of insensibility of matter hides the universal conscious force which works within it. So that the energy, which is the first form the force of creation assumes in the physical universe, appears to be itself inconscient, and yet does the work of a vast occult intelligence. And so now he's going to describe all the steps of evolution. In the very first step, what has happened is This veil, this screen of matter which hides everything, prevents you from seeing that it is actually the conscious force, capital C and F, that is the Chit of the Satchidananda, the Chit Shakti of the Satchidananda, which is actually hidden, works within it, within matter. So I take an object, here's a stone. I don't see consciousness. I don't see force. I don't even see energy. All I see is rigid matter. I can whack it, it doesn't break, it resists. Oh, it's just stone. It's not alive, it's not conscious. But if you were able to see through this screen, this veil of matter, what do you see? The first thing you discover is there is an energy inside it. And that's what science tells you. Here's a lump of uranium. If I gather enough uranium into my hands, then eventually it starts becoming warm. If I gather still more, it becomes so warm that it heats up, and before I know it, there's a flash and an explosion and energy is released. Where did it come from? It was already hidden inside the uranium. And uranium is unstable. So the instability aggrandized when I brought too much of it together. But if I take a piece of iron or that stone, the same energy is in it also. And in that flash of the nuclear explosion, barely a few atoms became pure energy. The bulk of it was just thrown out in the impact of the explosion. Just a few atoms releasing so much energy. What you see in matter is energy which forms matter. So he says, in the evolution, the first form the force of creation assumes in the physical universe is energy, capital E.